First.com, everybody. I'm Chief Meteorologist Eric Schneidel on a relatively busy day across western New York and the Rochester area. Gloomy conditions again. Most of this was snow earlier this morning. Had a lot of reports of about a slushy inch or so. We figured that's how this would play out. At this point, though, with temperatures continuing to rise, we're in the mid-30s right now in Rochester. This is kind of a yucky mix of both rain and snow, which largely means we're not talking any more accumulation expected, and thankfully, no more icy issues on the roadways. Now that we're above freezing, we're going to stay that way for a while. That will take us all the way into the weekend. In fact, it might not be until Sunday night the next time we watch the mercury drop below 32 degrees. But still, it's cold outside, just above freezing, kind of cold. You see what this has done for the precip. We're getting some additional action to fire off of Lake Ontario. These little streamers, though, you see are mostly green, which will fall in the form of rain. Every now and then, though, you might see a wet snowflake mix in there on the windshield, maybe hear a sleet pellet. But overall, at this point, this event is winding down, and everything that you see is light. Now, speaking of green, this is a graphic we really don't get to use a whole lot necessarily around here, but we get to use it today. What the heck is this? So we got this thing called a geomagnetic storm watch. Yeah, it's actually a thing, and I figure this will probably get upgraded to a warning. What is this? This is one of those deals where we think the northern lights are going to be at least possibly viewable across northern latitudes of the northern part of the United States. And they categorize these with numbers, kind of like the Saffir-Simpson scale with hurricanes, Cat 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A G3 is a decent little geomagnetic storm. And we know, depending on the number they attach to these, how strong they are, how far south the northern lights typically are viewable from prior G3 caliber storms. And you note this line here that we've got this painted in green. G3 storms do at times get the northern lights to be viewed as far south as Rochester. That's the fun part of the conversation. Now I get to play devil's advocate here with the reality of this. I spent some time in Anchorage, Alaska, where we had the aurora a lot. So I'm familiar with these storm watches, these storm warnings, and how they play out. They are notoriously difficult to predict and forecast. And here's why. These are chunks of plasma getting flung from our sun. They shoot out through space. We're moving in this whole process. Earth is rotating around. We're waving at it. Hey, if it ends up linking up just right and it strikes our planet, you get auroras. Great. But if it's just even a little bit off, you end up getting a whole lot of nothing. So these forecasts are, hey, in theory, if these things collide just right, we're going to end up getting something out of this in terms of the northern lights. Now, the watch itself is for technically tomorrow. And I'll mention this too, both the timing and the intensity of these often don't necessarily play entirely to how predictions go. So if they say, hey, we think this is going to be December 10th, you could end up getting that chunk of plasma to hit the Earth earlier than that. That could happen tonight. There could be auroras out there. It could also be a day late. I've seen that happen there too. I've also seen it happen that they're stronger and or weaker than expected. So I guess my point of all of this is I don't want to get everybody too overly excited about it just because these go wrong very often. And then there's the other elephant in the room. Even if there's auroras overhead and we've got clouds and lake effect rain and snow, you ain't going to see anything. So there's a lot of layers that we need to watch with this. And let's talk about that. Let's talk about the cloud cover prospect, just for argument's sake, saying that we have some auroras out there. If tonight is when this event ends up happening, you're not going to see it across western New York. We're mostly cloudy. We still have some rain and snow out there. It's just not going to work. It'll be a bust. Now, hypothetically tomorrow, if this ends up being the northern lights start, kind of popping here later tomorrow night, that becomes a much more intriguing prospect. You note those clouds clearing out. In fact, I would argue almost ideal conditions to be able to see the aurora if this holds out and plays out tomorrow night into early Friday morning. And like the name suggests, you're going to want to look northward. Some of the best places to be when you start having the prospect of auroras in and around the Rochester area or just western New York happens to be along the lakeshore for a couple of reasons. Number one, you want to be as far north as you can, generally speaking. But number two, and probably the most important one, there are no lights out there on Lake Ontario. And often these events are kind of faint. They don't necessarily look like they do in pictures that are long exposure shots where the whole sky is vibrant green. It's more subtle. But you want to get away from city lights. So if you happen to be somebody that's got a spot there right along the lakeshore, that's really the best place you could possibly be to maximize your chances of being able to see something. Then the clouds come back around here. This is our forecast into the weekend. We will start mostly dry on Saturday. There could be some light stuff around. More rainfall moves in by the afternoon into Saturday night. We'll have leftover showers continuing on Sunday. Eventually, that can turn into a minuscule rain-snow mix Sunday night in the early part of the day on Monday. But a big warm-up coming our way. We'll go 43 tomorrow, near 50 on Friday. Same deal Saturday. I'm thinking mid to upper 40s seems fair, but low 50s on Sunday before some of that colder air gets back in here. We're back live on air at 4 o'clock. I'll see you then.